Even more disturbing than the creature that stalked the slopes of Miners Mountain was the effect it had on those poor souls who climbed it. Hi, I'm your host. And in this installment of our series on the most horrifying places in the world, we're gonna find out why Miners Mountain is best left unexplored. So grab your headlamp and a shovel, because we're about to get to work. It was 1893 when a group of miners working in the Leadville mining district in Colorado decided to take a break from extracting silver from the earth to extract some recreation. The men were employed by the American Smelting and Refining Company at the Minnesota mine, situated at the base of Miners Mountain. And they were going to spend their night off climbing the peak, which loomed over the town like a silent sentinel. Some sources say the group consisted of 4 men, while others claim there were 6. All we know for certain is that one of the climbers was named Mike and that he brought along his dog. The rest of the names have been lost to time, if they were ever known. These men weren't inexperienced outdoorsmen. They knew these mountains well. But what they didn't know, or perhaps couldn't have known, was that this mountain would claim 2 of their own. And though no bodies were ever recovered, there are some things that suggest the fate of the missing men may be worse than death. As darkness fell, the 6-man team set out up the mountain. According to some accounts, they had a fight with some hobos and then continued on their way. Others say they just headed straight up the mountain with headlamps in hand. Either way, they were soon swallowed up by the black maw of the night and the mountain. The next morning, the men were supposed to report for work, but they didn't show up. Their foreman became worried and rounded up a search party to look for them. As the hours passed with no sign of the men, the worrying turned to fear. What could have happened to them? Had they been caught in an avalanche? Did a rock slide bury them beneath the snow? Maybe they got lost and were wandering around in the wilderness, lost and alone. The truth was no one knew what happened to them, but they were determined to find out. A massive search effort was launched, involving hundreds of people combing through the area for any sign of the missing miners. But despite their best efforts, there was nothing. No trace of the men or their headlamps could be found. It was as if they had vanished into thin air. Days turned into weeks, and still there was no sign of the miners. The only thing that was different was me. I was getting bigger. You see, I was born on that mountain. And as the weeks went by, I was growing stronger and hungrier than ever before. The thoughts of those miners still echoed in my mind. Their fear, their anger, their despair, it was a feast for me. And all this time, I was becoming more human, learning about their world, their language, their customs. I was becoming one of them, except I was still very much a monster. You might think that hearing the sound of voices would have scared me, that seeing another human being would have sent me running back to the darkness. But something about those miners, their bravery, their determination, it fascinated me. In their voices, I heard a challenge. They were strong and smart, and I wanted to see if they could stop me. I wanted to see if they could kill me. When the searchers left, I went to the place where they sat around the fire and talked. I looked at their camp, their beds, the things they used every day. It felt strange to me, but not as strange as the emotions that filled me. I felt a sense of loss, a deep sadness that I couldn't understand. Why did they leave? Where did they go? And most importantly, when would they come back? Then I started hearing their voices again, whispering in the wind, calling out to me in the darkness. At first, I thought it was just my imagination, but then I was sure of it. They were coming back, and I waited for them, hidden in the shadows, watching, listening. The first time I saw them, I was afraid. They had weapons, sharp and deadly. They could kill me if they wanted to. But then I remembered what I had learned from their conversations. These men were brave, skilled hunters, and I wanted them to try to kill me. I made my presence known to them, and then I ran. I ran as fast as I could, as far as I could, until I was sure they were following me. I led them on a chase through the forest, over rocks and streams, and finally up the mountainside. I could hear their shouts echoing behind me, their weapons firing, and I knew they were getting closer and closer. But I wasn't scared. I was excited. This was what I had been waiting for, the chance to test my strength against theirs, to see if I could escape their weapons, to see if I could survive. And then it happened. One of them got close enough to touch me. I could feel his fingers on my arm, and I knew I had been caught. But instead of killing me, they did something even worse. They took me with them. They tied me up and dragged me along as they continued their search for the other missing miners. I struggled against my bonds, but it was no use. They were too strong for me, and then I realized why they hadn't killed me. They wanted to use me to find the other miners. They thought I knew something they didn't, and they were right. I did know something they didn't. I knew that none of them would make it off this mountain alive. They kept me with them for days, forcing me to walk alongside them as they searched for their friends. They beat me and starved me, and I hated them for it, but I also admired them. They were strong and determined, and I knew they wouldn't give up until they found what they were looking for. But when they did find it, it wasn't what they expected. One day, they came across a clearing, and in the middle of it was a circle of stones. The stones were arranged in a strange pattern, and in the center was a pile of bones. The men stopped and stared at the sight, and I knew what they were thinking. This was the spot where the other miners had made their camp. But what happened to them? Where did they go? And most importantly, how did they die? We don't know what happened to the miners after that. Some say they went mad and attacked each other. Others say they were picked off one by some unknown predator. Still, others say they were taken by the government so that we can't know what really happened on that mountain. But the truth is, I don't know what happened to them either. What I do know is that the mountain claimed all of them. The men who set out to climb the peak never came back down. They were lost to the mountain, and I was next. As the weeks passed, I grew weaker and weaker. The mountain was taking its toll on me. I could feel my body changing, my skin turning green, my eyes becoming yellow, my teeth growing long and sharp. I could hear the voices of the miners growing louder and louder in my head, and I knew it was only a matter of time before they consumed me entirely. And then it happened. One day, as I was walking through the forest, I heard a voice. It was the voice of one of the miners, and he was calling my name. I followed the sound of his voice and found him sitting by a campfire. He was alone, and I could see the fear in his eyes as he looked at me. He tried to speak, but no words came out. He reached out to me, but I backed away. I could see the confusion on his face, the realization that I was no longer one of them. I was a monster, and he was the last man standing between me and the rest of the world. He stood up and took a step toward me, and I knew what he was thinking. He was going to kill me. And in that moment, I knew I had finally become the monster that the mountain had created me to be. The last thing I remember is the sound of his voice, the crack of his rifle, and then nothing. If you enjoyed this terrifying tale, stay tuned for more horrifying stories from all around the world. Thanks for watching. I've been your host. Until next time, don't forget to keep an eye out for monsters, especially on mountains.